I'm joined by Matt Hale, who seems to be kind of the permanent guest host that we've had lately with the last 3 episodes. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Glad that you can make it. And we are discussing the wonderful invention of time machines. So we're going to cover 2 of the most, I would say, prolific out of the few that we've discussed. The DeLorean from Back to the Future and the TARDIS from Doctor Who. Now, Matt, you've got the TARDIS. I kind of want you to go ahead and go first with that one. So give me a little bit about this. I'm not as much of a Whovian as I probably should be. So what is all this? What is the TARDIS and everything?
I wouldn't describe myself as a Whovian, but I've always liked Doctor Who. Well, at least from grad school up. So it's a time machine from the show Doctor Who. Doctor Who's the longest running sci-fi television series. So it started in 1963, went up to 89, then it took a break, then it came back in 2005, and it's ongoing. TARDIS is an acronym. It stands for Time and Relative Dimension in Space. And I just wrote this note a second ago. If you go to Sandy Springs, there's a nerd bar called Battle and Brew, and they have a restroom that is shaped like a TARDIS, which is referred to colloquially as the TARDIS that everyone visits. So that's a piece of information if you find your way down there. So this is the invention and technology of the Time Lords. They're ancient extraterrestrial beings. The main one that we follow in the series is the Doctor. That's his or her name because they can change gender and regenerate into new forms. Other ones are kind of more, have crested and interesting adornment and wardrobes, but the Doctor typically looks like an ordinary human being in ordinary clothing. The Time Lords are capable of time travel. They perceive time in a non-linear fashion, so they think about it differently than we do, or humans do. They're from a planet named Gallifrey. They're kind of the custodians of time and space, and they use these TARDISes, I assume you pluralize it that way, to kind of observe, not interfere in time and history, but to kind of watch and make sure things are going okay. And the specific TARDIS that I'll kind of be focusing on is the Doctor's, which is a Type 40 Mark 1 TT, as I best understand it, which is kind of an old TARDIS, version. Not one of the newer, more fancy editions. He's just had sort of a love affair with this piece of technology in his particular iteration.
Okay.
So that's the base of like what the TARDIS is, and then we can, I guess, talk about later like what its strengths and weaknesses and what it does beyond travel. Yeah,
for sure. Beyond travel, obviously. Like I said, I've seen some of the spoof stuff the Family Guy brings into that with Doctor Who and all that, and the TARDIS, and of course seeing everything around that about the TARDIS.
And it's a lot more popular in the States than it once was. With the introduction of Matt Smith, it's kind of become more of a U.S. phenomenon, not exclusively U.S., but like it's a lot more well-known. You can go into a Hot Topic or a box lunch and see a TARDIS T-shirt, whereas 10 or 15 years ago, you wouldn't really do that.
You might see 1 or 2 things at like Books A Million, and then that would be about it. Yeah. Well, the whole concept of the janitor cleaning up time thing is very interesting to me. You transition over to, if you want, some of the abilities that this thing has other than just obviously time travel.
Yeah.
So what are we looking at here? Is this thing got weapons on it or something, or is it able to?
At least with the Doctor's kind of a pacifist through time and space, so he doesn't really have weapons. I think I was looking up, and there was apparently like time missiles. I don't know what that means. I don't know how you projectile time.
Just shooting random time missiles at people.
I don't know what
You're
that
going
means.
back 15 seconds.
I'm not sure what it means. It's interesting, but like at least from my viewing of, particularly from like 2005 up series, there's a chameleon circuit that is in theory supposed to allow the TARDIS to blend into its surroundings. So as you're traveling through time, you park your car, your TARDIS, and it's supposed to cloak itself and look like something that's not anachronistic. It's supposed to fit into the time frame. The Doctor's, however, is damaged. There's this chameleon circuit that's broken, and it always looks like a police box, this TARDIS blue is what people call it. British police box. That's been updated and changed through time, but it's always this box. I think in the original series it was like a little sort of like tin can looking cylinder at some point in the original series, but basically it's been a British police box. There are reasons why, at least the Doctor says he likes that. He's kind of romanticized it and attracted to it. So he could fix a circuit, but he's kind of grown attached to it. I also think it's a little easier in terms of like the production of the series or the show, right? Like there are people having to build these sets. It's easier to make that than some sort of alien spacecraft looking thing. It's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. That's kind of the constant.
That whole wizard effect?
Yeah, so it's bigger on the inside, or you could say it's You could say the inverse of that, I guess. But the inside and the outside exist at two different sort of dimensions, or in two different dimensions at the same time.
Okay.
So as you view it, it looks like an ordinary police box. You walk in, and it's much, much, much larger. It has multiple rooms, like a swimming pool and a library. There's always the control room is typically what we as the viewer get to see, which changes depending on which doctor. When David Tennant's doctor was there, he had like a coral-shaped room. He later regenerates into a new character. It kind of refreshes itself like an update on a computer.
Oh,
and
like
then,
a new operating system type thing.
Yeah, exactly. So
Okay.
it's got sort of this ability to cloak itself. Later, it had a perception filter where people would kind of look past it and not see it. And then it has a lot of defense systems. So it's not really an offensive machine. It's more of like defensive. So if you try to attack it, it can protect itself. And the weirdest thing about the TARDIS, or the most interesting thing, is it's not really just like getting into a Honda and driving forward through space and time. It is grown, and it has a consciousness. So in The Doctor's Wife, we get to kind of see that personified, which is an episode written by Neil Gaiman. And it's really good and really interesting, but like it has its own intentionality, has its own sense of agency. You can't just make the TARDIS do whatever you want like you could your Honda or something.
Yeah.
But it has intention and can do what it wants. And sometimes it disagrees with whatever you're trying
So it's
to do.
self-aware.
Yeah. And
Self-aware, time-traveling police box.
Yeah. So it's
That doesn't sound scary at all.
yeah, it's a box that's nearly impenetrable. Anything travel through space and time, and typically it kind of disappears, makes a weird whirring sound, and then pops back up. But frequently we'll also see it traveling through physical space and kind of bumping into stuff, depending
Okay.
on what context it's in.
Okay. So overall, sounds like we've got a pretty good contender here with based off of what the DeLorean is compared to what the TARDIS is. Before we go any further into the DeLorean, go ahead and check over with Haley real fast regarding anybody have any questions, comments, concerns, anything like that?
Yes, we do have a few comments in here. One says from Courtney Clyde, love the debate that's happening so far. Love the debate that has happened
Thanks.
over the course of the show that has been happening. Another comment from her. Personally, I like the TARDIS more. DeLorean is great, but the TARDIS has more range and options as to where you go versus DeLorean is mostly just time travel. One from Spencer Dunnings, and it says, of course, your heart wants to go with the DeLorean, but just as far as actual contingency, the TARDIS.
Oh, for sure. And when I start going through this stuff with the DeLorean, I guess that kind of segues into the DeLorean. You know, Dr. Emmett L. Brown, Doc, he is the guy behind the machine, the man behind the myth and everything like that. The DeLorean featured in the Back to the Future film. I always remember the scene where Marty McFly first season goes, Doc, you made a time machine out of a DeLorean. And it's just the disappointment that comes upon that, that creates this whole thing. You guys know Marty McFly to change the past and do better, to undo the negative effects of time travel. I found out they covered over 130 years of Hill Valley time frames, anywhere from 1885 to 2015. Which I remember the day that everyone thought we were supposed to be wearing helmets and all of flying cars and all of that for 2015, because back in the 80s that was a very far destination.
No hoverboards.
Yeah, no hoverboards. You know, the operator, of course, is seated inside the DeLorean, except for the first time when the remote control was used for the dog, which was pretty cool. Still want to know how they did that in the film. Obviously, they did it with remote control, but they turn on the time circuits, activating a unit containing multiple to 14 to 7 segment displays that show the destination. Red is the destination, present is green, and last departed is yellow, dates and times. After you enter the target date, the operator accelerates to the car to 88 miles per hour. You know the reason they chose 88 miles per hour? They thought it was cool. They thought it looked cool. That was the thing. They was like,
it's of the numbers, it's a good one.
Yeah, it is a good one. It is a good one. Which, of course, goes up to about 141.6 kilometers per hour, which activates the flux capacitor, as we all know. Then we see all the lovely flashes and all that. Then you get the patent dual flame with the, outtake or something like that for the license plate. I can't remember. Yeah, I think it's outtake on the license plate that just starts circling.
Oh, yeah.
But the production crew, like I said, chose Velocity simply because they liked how it looked on the speedometer, which was a cool little fact that I found. No weapons. No, I don't have weapons, unfortunately. It
does recycle, though.
It does recycle. The observers outside of the vehicle see an implosion of plasma as the vehicle disappears, while occupants within the vehicle see a quick flash of light and instantaneously arrive at the target time at the same spatial location. Kind of hard to hide a DeLorean. There's no cloaking device like
and it's a heavy vehicle. Like if you don't even consider the time machines.
Exactly.
It's a very heavy
vehicle.
Yeah.
I remember. I think it's the third one they go into the Wild West.
Yep.
They had a few issues there. There's always been a few technical glitches with the DeLorean, which is what makes the movie. That hinders it with time travel for its users. In Star's film, the car has a starter problem, which I found funny because it's a DeLorean. And the hard time restarting once stopped, much smarter repeated frustration. In the second movie, the destination time display malfunctions and shows random dates. For instance, mostly January 1st of 1885, which is kind of foretowing what they're going to go to in the third one, which is the Wild West, if I remember correctly. In the third movie, the flying circuits and fuel line are added by Doc in 2015. The fuel injection manifold are damaged, preventing the car from moving under its own power. Then Mr. Fusion, and we were talking about this earlier before the show got. I think this is the coolest thing ever on a time machine, to take a Mr. Coffee and turn it into Mr. Fusion. Yeah. He shoved a trapped can, like just a crushed can, into this thing and was like, yep, now it's got fuel. Yeah. Like that was supposed to be better. Maybe that's what we should go into to alternative fuels.
It's eco-friendly.
Yeah, it is eco-friendly.
Yeah.
The Mr. Fusion home energy reactor converts household waste to power from time machine's flux capacitor. And the time circuit using nuclear fusion, presumably cold fusion, in the film. It allows the DeLorean time machine to generate the required 1.21 let me say it how he is. 1.21 gigawatts. Yeah. That's exactly how it has to go. I can't say it any other way. The energy produced by Mr. Fusion replaces the plutonium as the primary power source. Because remember the first one, the guys are trying to attack him and kill him, which is a wonderful thing.
Is it in danger of exploding at any moment? Because if you're comparing apples to oranges or A, B, right? Like, there's precedent of the TARDIS exploding and kind of like possibly destroying all of time and space and existence. So like if you're making an A-B list, that seems like a bummer.
I mean, there is a plutonium fission reactor that is most likely left installed underneath Mr. Fusion as a backup power source.
So I feel like that...
I feel like, yes, there's a possibility for both of these to explode at any point in time.
So I feel like if you compared A to B, I feel like like the TARDIS would kill all of existence, whereas your option would kill fewer beings.
Yes.
So like if you're comparing them...
Yes. If yours malfunctions... You're stuck there for a while and
possibly destroying
everything. Mine malfunctions, you lose Marty McFly.
Yeah, you might blow up Albuquerque.
Yeah, what is the Hill Valley? Hill Valley disappears forever.
But
Marty's never born.
Yeah.
Got to make as many puns as I can about that one. It's a stainless steel body, of course, which improves the flux dispersal generated by the flux capacitor. As it turns, it allows the vehicle smooth passage through the space-time continuum. The time machine is electric, requires a power input of 1.21 gigawatts, which is 1,620,000 horsepower to operate. That is insanity. Of course, we know the steam locomotive pushes it up. All in all, the whole flying concept was really cool. I thought, both of them being able to fly, the TARDIS and the DeLorean having that chance to fly. I think that the DeLorean, as nostalgic as it is and as awesome as I love it, has a lot of technical problems in the movies.
Yeah.
And I feel like if it was an everyday thing like the TARDIS, then we'd have an issue.
Like your starter could go out or you could get a flat tire.
Exactly.
Which is a bummer. Though the TARDIS often breaks or doesn't do what it's supposed to do half of the time.
It is
because it has its own free will. So you would be like, I would like to go to Pompeii, and it's like, instead of that, we're going to Zaxby's.
To reference a previous episode, you mentioned the TARDIS and Brainiac working together.
Yeah,
that would be a very bad idea.
So I also like the fact that they're similar, and there's in the sense that there's the Doctor with the article adjective, and then there's Doc. I think that's a funny little comparison. Not that I do much with it, I just like that.
The way I say Doc is strictly because of that movie. I can't help it for that. So I'd say this. We've got to get kind of closer towards this debate section. But before that, I want to reach out to Haley. Haley, is there anything coming into the boards right now about the DeLorean or anything like that? Any questions or anything?
Okay, let's see here. Another comment said if we're picking which one we would rather ride in, you'd pick the DeLorean just for
Oh,
the
yeah.
nostalgia factor,
Yeah.
which is understandable completely. Another one is, even though the TARDIS messes up, at least it brings you on an adventure in space, whereas the DeLorean, you're not going.
You're not going space.
You're not. Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's no spacebound ability, unfortunately, with the DeLorean.
You would die.
You would die. Yeah. Regardless of how space effect it looked in the first one when they tried. I will say, you can still buy DeLoreans. I don't know what company took over, but I know it's not just DeLorean anymore. There's a company that actually
they're
licensed
reproducing
building
them?
them. Yeah, they do
didn't know
reproduce them.
Nice.
But they're a high dollar and they're for
Yeah.
collector mentality people.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, the DeLorean wasn't exactly the best vehicle in the world.
Yeah.
It had a lot of issues.
Expensive and heavy, and
Yeah. It at times wouldn't go to 88 miles per hour.
which is problematic.
I feel like we got to get started to this debate. I don't know why. I feel like I'm forgetting something.
You did forget one point. There's
Oh, what was that?
Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Oh,
Oh yeah, the comparison.
Just announced the reboot, nonetheless. So
number 3. Yeah.
I think that was just perfect timing.
Bill and Ted.
They were looking out for me.
I think something might have happened that might have happened on my computer because now there's information on my computer about this, and I don't know how it happened.
Wow.
I think Bill and Ted helped out with this one.
It definitely excellent.
Reaching very hard for a time joke. This is not good. Okay, cool. Bill and Ted, I will talk about that a little bit. I'm also going to mention a little bit of Rick and Morty, too, just because of the
Makes
iconic
sense.
mention of everything else. Bill and Ted, in 2688, humanity has built a utopia thanks to music of Wild Stallions, which you guys don't know is the Bill and Ted stuff. That is their music that they do, the air guitar and everything from the Patton movie, which I cannot wait for the newest one when it comes out. The supreme beings of this world instruct Rufus, which is Carline, George Carline. I think that's who it is, right? Yeah. And he to travel back in time by the time machine disguised as a phone booth to give aid to Bill and Ted to ensure that they pass their class. Rufus lands by the two as they work on the report near the Circle K, which is popping up everywhere all of a sudden, by the way. As he introduces himself, a second phone booth lands nearby, and future versions of Bill and Ted come out, proving their identity to younger selves and telling them to trust Rufus before they leave. By the way, side note, if my current self, stopped in a time machine and told me to trust somebody, don't know how I'd feel about that. I'd be a little creeped out. I'd be a little worried. And at the same time, I think I'd still have to go with the guy. Yeah. I'm not sure. Yeah. The way this time machine worked, I have spent, we announced this episode a couple weeks ago. I spent all that time, plus last night, just trying to find how this machine works besides what the movie says, which is you dial in the year and then boom, you're there.
There's not a lot of
There's
explanation.
not a lot of explanation in this. It's just kind of magic. There are people and there are theories that go into this, but they were a little bit too scientific for me, unfortunately, to understand.
And I think a lot of it has to do with like its intertextual relationship with the Doctor, right? Like it's clearly an imitation of.
They make that's the other thing is they make that reference, that phone booth reference is strictly to Doctor Who.
Yeah. And is it the second one where they play chess with death?
Yes, it is the second.
I was going to say that's a little reference to the Seventh Seal, the Bergman movie. I only saw that film, which is kind of a classic film everyone ought to see, by virtue of watching Bill and Ted and going like, what? That's an interesting concept to play chess with death and try to best him or her. I guess death could be genderless.
And let's kind of switch over tempos a little bit here. With Bill and Ted and the other two, something that each of them have differently is how they approach the concept of time. So with Bill and Ted, they're going back in time and reliving things, and they're not making as much impact by being there, as you can see. But with the TARDIS and with the DeLorean, touching or manifesting any form of time is a no-no.
Yeah.
So I kind of find it funny that these high schoolers are going back in time and dealing with all of this and not having the ability to not mess up time.
Yeah.
That's a little weird for me.
Which is interesting if you place it in context of the Doctor Who. The Doctor's kind of like the custodian, right? So he or she, the Doctor's now played by Jodie Whittaker, so it's represented as a female character, or a female actress, I guess you'd say. The idea that they're kind of going through time and fixing things or righting wrongs. There are certain fixed points in time that you can't, alter or mess up or try to change. So you are kind of hands off.
Yeah.
Which is different from what the Time Lords would want you to just observe and not really affect it too much, versus two high school people who do air guitar frequently, just kind of blundering through time and space.
Picking up random people out of history to
So there's a
for
great
report.
episode of The Simpsons. I think it was one of the Treehouse episodes where Homer goes back in time and he falls onto like a mosquito and kills it.
And it kills,
then
and everything
keeps
else.
having these issues. There's a science fiction novel that I can't remember the name of off the top of my head, where the main character's name is John Barr. And so like when there's a thing called a John Barr hinge, anytime you go back in time and instead of picking up a coin, like when you're 5, you wished you'd pick up this coin, you travel back in time, you pick up this coin instead of leaving it there, and everything for your life, changes. Rather than being poor, you're wealthy, and you're miserable, but you're wealthy, versus being happy and poor. That happens in all sorts of these kinds of narratives, which I think is funny with the Doctor intentionally changing things. Bill and Ted, high school people, just sort of blundering through space and time.
I think Billy the
versus, like,
Kid
Rick
would
and Morty.
remember. Yeah, I think Billy the Kid would remember being taken into the future.
Mhm.
Yeah, and speaking of Rick and Morty,
Or
of
Socrates.
course, anyone that's a fan of the show knows this. And if you don't know this, the show is based off of, loosely based off of kind of the adventure of what Doc Brown and Marty McFly would have. That's what Rick and Morty, in essence, was modeled after. And I love the time concept from that. The infinite timelines and all of that, and they poke so much fun at it.
Yeah, multiverses.
The multiverse theory, all of that. There's so many things in that stem from what we're talking about today, which is the TARDIS and DeLorean. So let's get straight into this battle thing here, battle thing that we have. With we'll put Bill and Ted as that slight, small time contender there in the corner.
Yeah.
But I think when it comes down to overall concepts, I think that the TARDIS has a stronger travel mobility and concept for that, and has defenses. You get shot up in the DeLorean in the Wild Wild West, as you see in the movies.
Yeah.
There's not much shooting back at you.
Yeah. Or your starter goes out.
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
anything, because it has all the foibles of a car.
Yeah,
'Cause it's a car.
yeah, exactly. You're hindered by the technology that you put it a part of, and the DeLorean, unfortunately, was that. Now, if they come out and make a time machine out of a rocket, then we might have a better shot now.
or if there's ever a reboot or like a 4th film or 5th film, or like if they continue it, I could see them doing, as they often do in reboots, or continuations of the series,
of the series.
And it's been refreshed
Yeah,
to
right.
reflect the contemporary day in which we live, which could happen.
And I wish that they would do that. They would do another one of these. There's always those rumors about them trying to do it, especially because the 2015 that stuff happened, and they made the spoof on Jimmy Fallon and all of that about the DeLorean. I wish they would do another Back to the Future, but unfortunately, directors have all stated that we're not going to get another one, which is fine. So we've covered overall battle with this. I think I think we'll go back over to the voice of the people real quick. Haley, any more comments, concerns, or anything like that regarding anything that we can answer real quick?
Getting some people on my side, Bill and Ted, definitely.
Bill
they
and
just
Ted?
loved that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they enjoyed that. Again, I think Matt brought up a good point. It depends on what you're looking at as far as just time travel. It's versatility.
Yeah.
Like just in general, it depends on how you're coming at that for a debate, and that's kind of what people are saying.
What we're getting online too.
And one of the benefits of the TARDIS is that it's effectively, since its interior and exterior exist in 2 different dimensions, which feels like a Schrödingerian sort of thing. But like, okay, that happens.
They
Therefore,
find
it's,
Schrödinger's cat in there.
yeah,
as well.
right. So therefore, it's bigger on the inside. There, in theory, it's like infinitely large.
Yeah.
So like you have endless number of closets. You can have multiple pools. I don't know why you need multiple pools, but let's say you do. You can have effectively anything you want. So it's infinite inside. I guess that would also potentially be a negative, in the sense of like you ever lost your keys. Right. So like
lose the
if you
keys
had
of the
infinite,
TARDIS?
yeah. So like if you had infinite space in which to lose keys, that could be a negative.
With the machine though being and my mind blanks.
Being sentient.
Yeah, but the machine
probably
being
remind you.
sentient, it'd probably be like it'd find a way to toy with you a little bit, like your keys are over here type thing.
Yeah.
I would assume that it wouldn't want its keys lost, unfortunately, with that one.
Yeah, and also you can snap and open the door, which I can snap, but only with one hand. So if my hand were removed, I couldn't snap with this hand. So in theory, I couldn't do that feeture. So with a car, if you had a key fob,
Yeah, you're right. With a key fob, you can open it up. Yeah,
you can open it up from a distance.
You could, we got to avoid you losing that one hand. We got either that, or you got to start practicing snapping with the other hand for
Yeah,
you.
I
That
just
way
can't
we
do
can.
But I'm trying to be fair and balanced as possible. I think the TARDIS is the clear winner, but the key fob thing.
Yeah, we've of course got to keep it to where people vote and everything like that. Yeah, I do agree. Yeah, after doing all this research, I originally I thought, okay, this is going to be awesome. These two are going to be close, evenly matched with the way they are. I don't know much about Doctor Who, obviously, so I didn't get a chance to. I did a little bit of research on my own, but not as much of like you have done, which is good. Plus, you're a fan of the show, which is a good thing.
It's a powerful little box.
It is compared to this this lovely DeLorean. There's not much. There's not much to fight with.
And both of them have the nostalgia factor too.
Oh yeah, I mean, Doctor Who's been around since what the late 60s.
Yeah. So it's been around forever. But also being able to see, I've seen at various cons, someone drive by in a DeLorean. That's there is kind of a special giddy feeling of seeing that drive around. Like seeing one at a Sonic, super weird.
Yeah,
you
get
can't
a
really
little
park
happy.
a box at a Sonic. I mean, you could, but you should.
You could try.
Yeah,
try.
Be weird.
It's almost like it reminds me of the Walmart commercial that happened with all the DeLoreans and the time machines and there's a mystery machine and stuff like that. They throw all this 80s and 90s cartoon and movie nostalgia into one commercial, and halfway through the commercial you're just wondering who are you talking to?
They're trying to get those millennial dollars.
Yeah, they're trying very hard. One other thing I will say, I forgot to mention, the steel body of the DeLorean, but it's always got that lovely blue light on it.
Mm-hmm.
That lovely blue LED cheapo light it's all through the back and sides of this car.
Yeah.
And the glorious fans on the back that look like they're about to launch into space.
It's stylistically rustic.
We'll say when you compare the two, mine looks like it could go into space eventually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you're not going to make it.
Does its windows roll this way?
Yeah.
It does.
It's a manual window thing, and they only come down just I think a little bit if I remember correctly. There's a partial window for that one.
Okay, so I revise my Sonic statement.
Yeah, but the DeLorean does have the gull wing doors, which was like every person's fantasy for that. So that was cool.
You could put your Route 44.
Note to Chevy and Ford: start putting gull wing doors in everything, please. I would love to have to reach a mile up in order to close my door. Well, we're running close to the end here. I want to double check one more time with Haley to see if there's anything else that anybody has any questions about regarding this.
A final comment from Brianna Valdez. Time travel makes me nervous in general. The thought of messing up history or my own life based off choices made while time traveling is too much of a responsibility for my liking, which I can't be mad at. I kind of agree.
Yeah, I do agree with this. Like I said, the fact with Bill and Ted, you have the two high school teenagers that are going back in time and grabbing these people. Abraham Lincoln, Billy the Kid. These guys are obviously going to remember what happened to them. I was in the year. I don't even remember what year it was in the movie. Yep. But I was in that year, and all of this stuff happens to me.
In all this media that we've been talking about, other than Rick and Morty, time travel's kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in Rick and Morty, it gets very, very, very dark. And I do like that it kind of explores that side because it
you don't see it very often.
Yeah. And typically in popular representations of time travel, or at least the three that we're talking about here, it's fun. Like, it's pleasant. You get to go back and see Pompeii. I don't know why I said Pompeii twice a day, but, you get to go see ancient Rome or something.
Yeah, you get a chance to go see something that you wouldn't usually see in normal type.
Versus Rick and Morty, you go to sort of a Cronenberg world in which you did one thing, and now the entire world's destroyed.
The entire world is Cronenberg.
Yeah.
Come on, Cronenberg. Morty, we're going to fit right in here.
Yeah.
You're right.
So I appreciate that about Rick and Morty.
Yeah, I do, too. Dan Harmon and them do a great job on all of that. Yeah. So we're getting close to the end here. I want to thank everybody so much for taking your time out of your busy schedule to come out here and check this out. I also want to say a farewell to Haley Smith. Haley is graduating soon on May the 4th. May the 4th be with you. So Haley, you've have the chance to be able to spend some time with us in the show, and I really appreciate everything. I know that we don't have a camera really on you right now, but thank you so much for taking your time out of your year to be a part of this.
Yeah,
and really help us
absolutely.
out. And with that said, polls open up, everybody, in just a little while. We'll try to get it up within the next 24 to 48 hours. Polls are still open for Wonder Woman versus Thor because it was a late poll that we accidentally missed. And the Marvel versus DC episode that was just before this one is still live as well. You guys decide the fates of these contenders. It's DeLorean versus the TARDIS. Vote, and we'll see you next time on Pop vs. Culture.